was just curious.
Yes.
I was just talking to Rachel, our librarian.
It's good.
I don't know.
You're on top of
Bigger.
No, I haven't.
You know, home truck.
We will call the meeting to order.
Yeah, we're the district.
No running in the building. And if you would do a application for us, Renee?
Father, we just come before you, Lord, and we thank you, Father, for giving us this opportunity in this beautiful day outside. We just pray, Father, you be with us today, and we invite your Holy Spirit to be with us. We pray, Father, you give us your wisdom, and we love you so much, and we just thank you for letting us be your servants for we the people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And small comments on the video system. So I don't have the mics on tonight, which never worked that great anyways. We have a new video system installed. These microphones here should now be emphasizing the speakers near the front of the room and near the public comment section. So hopefully there is better audio on the recordings for people that consume the information in that way. Just in case there's difficulties with the new system, I have the old system running as a backup as well. And if you would do roll call for us, Tracy.
Carrie.
Here.
Nola.
Here.
Christy.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Renee.
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy is here. Jeffrey.
Here. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. If I have a motion.
Make the motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Carrie, do we have a support?
Support.
Support by Noel. Any discussion among the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of the past meeting minutes, and we do, as Noah noted, we had a correction here in that when Tracy was making it, there's a planning commission report section and a zoning board of appeals report section, and they ended up coming out the same as the planning commission report. So Tracy's already corrected that, the board has the correction. And so with that adjustment, we'll be looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the past meeting minutes as amended.
A motion by Carrie, do we have support?
Support.
Support by Lee. Any comment from the board? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the treasurer's report. The board have any questions about the treasurer's report? Hearing none, we will place that on file. Next, we have paying the bills.
Make the motion to pay the bills, please.
Carrie makes the motion to pay the bills. Do we have support?
I'll support.
Support by Renee. Any discussion among the board? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Carrie.
Aye.
Renee.
Yes, ma'am.
Lee.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
Nola.
Yes.
Tracy, yes. Christy.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have the fire department report, if you would, Chief.
Thank you, sir. 61 calls for service last month, a little lower than normal. Response times are staying well within limits. This Wednesday, rain or shine, the fire prevention open house will be going on. There is no parade, just due to logistics. But the weather is going to be what it is, and we'll do what we have to do. The new heavy rescues in service have already been put to the test quite a few times. And has worked out very, very well. I'm very pleased with it so far. On to the next thing. As of this morning, we were not unofficially awarded the FEMA grant, which is something we had talked about, which we had done with some of the ARPA money. I had spoke with the vendors. I know it's a contentious thing. You'd offered me $60,000. I will probably spend no more than 53. I'll return the $7,000 to the board. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the planning commission report, if you would, Lee.
Met September 27th. First meeting, first item of business was a public hearing for 3918 Holt Road Trinity Equipment. There's just a special use permit for combining of two properties because they own two properties and they're putting up a new pole building. It's going to set directly on the property lines. So to make setbacks requirements, they need to be conjoined. that was approved. Site plans as well. Second item was a special or a site plan review for 3170 Whitehall Road for affordable pole barn. They're also adding the pole barn. There's current driveway there, and they're looking to remove it and add a new one, but that will be approved by the Muskegon County Road Commission. But we motioned and approved that contingent on the Road Commission. Third item was another site plan review for 1155 West Riley Thompson Road at Duck Creek RV Park. It was just amendment to their site plan. One of the dimensions was wrong on their pool house that they're adding. So that was motion approved. Fourth item, another site plan review for 2887 Industrial Parkway. Another pole barn for a small business being added. They're also going to add 2 shipping containers for storage. That was also motion approved. And the last item was a review of an amendment of the zoning ordinance regarding solar systems. With the changes we discussed during work session, the draft was a motion approved for the next meeting for a public hearing.
Quite a lot from the planning commission.
Yes.
Next, we have the annual audit presentation by Eric. Go ahead and take over, Eric. Now everyone's very excited.
Oh, yes. I usually do a little PowerPoint show, but my new laptop doesn't talk to that projector very well, and it's not been really legible. I played with it, and I just said, I'll just bring a hard copy. Otherwise, we'll be looking at this greenish hue, and nobody will be able to read it anyway.
Thank you.
Of course, as always, pretty much everything I talk about is in your little book anyway. Here we go. Somebody get 2 copies by chance?
You can use this one if you need.
I did.
There we go. I knew I brought
I
a
thought,
copy.
wow, that's really thick.
I was gonna say. All right. Starting on the front page there, page 1, or the first page inside after the title page, this is your usual paragraph from the independent auditor's report. Otherwise, this is just a set of financial statements. We do an audit. We put our letter in there. It becomes an audit report. We express our opinion. And that paragraph there reads as it typically has in our opinion. The financial statements referred to above present in all material respects the various financial statements for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. And that means exactly what it says. We believe, based on our testing procedures, inquiries, everything else that we did, that your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles in all material respects. So that's the boring stuff. I know numbers are more interesting. So if you look at the next page there, this is a summary of the general fund, and I've got the prior year sitting next to it as well. This appears in the financial statements on page 38 if you wanted it in more detail. This is kind of condensed just to fit it all on one page. But you can see total revenues of $1,514,457. That's an increase of about $119,000 from last year. Just to talk about some of the changes that caused that increase. Intergovernmental revenues of the state share, you can see that increased to $883,000, almost $884,000. That's up about $123,000. Revenue sharing went up quite a bit this year. A couple factors for that. Revenue sharing, the constitutional portion of revenue sharing is based upon state sales tax collections, and those have continued to do quite well. Inflation actually helps that a little bit because if people have to charge more money for goods, that means the state gets more sales tax, which means you get more revenue sharing. And in addition, this was the census adjustment year, so there was some additional money due to census adjustments for additional population. Intergovernmental revenues local there of 38,000-ish. That's the county's now distributing money from its senior services millage to the local units. So that's the money that you guys receive from that to spend on your local seniors. Charges for services are down a little bit with a little less activity at the transfer station. And then other revenues on the bottom line there are down as well, as last year there was a lot of initial money that came in for the McDonald road assessment for people paying up front. Now you've just got the people making the annual payments, so that's down a little bit there. Technically, internally, you keep those two funds separately, but for external purposes to avoid deficit issues, the McDonald Road Fund and the general fund get combined together. All right, expenditure side, total expenditures of $1,150,600. That's down about $289,000 from last year. You can see general government, that's about the same. Public safety's up just a little bit. The main change there is under public works, and it's primarily comprised of roads, and that really is quite true for you guys at any given year. Your budget for expenditures varies quite a bit just by the amount of road projects you do. Some years you do a bunch, some years you don't do so much. You guys had kind of a heavy year in 2021 and just a lighter year in 2022. And I'm sure that will continue to go up and down in the future. Again, just depending upon how many road projects that you get done. I'm sure you pretty much was just a brining and chip sealing type of year. Not a whole lot else to say. No capital purchases in the general fund this year. Overall, you've got an increase of revenues over expenditures of $363,857. There were some transfers out to subsidize other funds of about $32,000. So overall, you've got an increase of $331,020. Ending fund balance of $2,023,305. So the general fund had a good year. You're able to accumulate some resources, put some money in the bank, and you were able to do what you wanted to do. So good news there. All right, and the next page, it's the chief's favorite page. It's the fire fund. All right, this appears in more detail in your financial statements on page 39, but for the slide here, I can fit more years so you can see more what's going on here. But total revenues in the current year are $551,187. That is an increase of about $7,000 last year, with property taxes going up a little bit due to increase in taxable value and a few other bucks here and there. Total expenditures of $385,363. Actual operating expenses in the fund were down. There were some one-time purchases in the prior year, air packs and uniforms and things like that. Capital outlay, on the other hand, was up with the purchase of a chassis for a new fire truck. So the net result is at $385,000, which is down about $27,000 from last year. So overall, the fund's up about $165,000, ending fund balance of $835,875. And I know you, subsequent to year, had to pay for the rest of that fire truck. So good news for the fire fund. All right, and then the sewer fund is on the next page. All right, and it's kind of nice that I can fit more years out here because you can see some big swings with COVID going on. Michigan's Adventures, obviously your biggest user, they were shut down for a chunk of fiscal year 2021. So you can see from going from 2020, kind of a drop off to 2021, and now a bounce back in 2022, although not still quite back to where it was previously. But you've got charges for services of $97,266. That's up about $15,000. Operating expenses of $170,003. That's up from last year about $31,000 with the treatment costs rebounding as well. A lot going on under non-operating activities. So the operations, that's just providing sewage services. Non-operating activities, you've got investment earnings, interest expense, and then connection fees as the township is covering some of those old wayside trailer park assessments, the sale of township land that was not needed. So you were able to move some money over there. And the net result is you actually had a positive increase in net position this year of $98,676, ending net position of just over $1 million. As a reminder, net position is different than fund balance. This fund is a full accrual fund, which is kind of like private sector accounting. I know I'm throwing a lot of jargon at you. But basically, your other funds, like your general fund with fund balance, you just are tracking current resources, your cash and things that will soon be converted to cash, receivables and payables. The sewer fund, being a full accrual fund, also includes all of your long-term items like fixed assets, debt, infrastructure, pipe in the ground. So that $1,003,000 includes all of those things. So that's not all spendable resources. The unrestricted net position, which I also list on the bottom, gives you a more idea of what's available to spend, and that's at about $672,000, and that went up a bit as well along with the change in net position. So I know you guys have been working, going back several years now, with those old sewer bonds, as the sewer fund has been slowly dwindling away, but with Michigan's Adventure hookups, some of these extra monies coming in and all that have helped this fund quite a bit, and have push some of those issues down the road. I know you guys are also making some adjustments to rates. So every year you make it, every year you're closer to the end of having those bonds paid off. So it's good news.
Yay.
So I'm just a boundless source of good news tonight. So
You are.
all of your big funds had a positive increase this year. So, all right. Any questions on the statements themselves? Otherwise, you guys have a couple of letters too that we'll talk about. Okay, you should have one letter. We have audited the financial statements. This is the auditor's letter to those charged with governance. We provide this letter every year. It's just a required communication that we have to provide for every audit we do. And we just talk about certain items. This letter has very specific items that go into it. It's not just whatever we feel like talking about. But if there were any new accounting policies adopted, we would report that. There weren't any big ones this past year. If there were any difficulties encountered in completing the audit, we would note that. Again, there weren't any. If there were disagreements with management on accounting or auditing principles, we would note that. There were not any significant audit adjustments, and there is an attachment there just kind of summarizing audit adjustments. But otherwise, for the most part, this is a pretty vanilla letter. We're required to provide it. You guys have it. You know what it is. I wouldn't worry about that one too much. The other letter that you've got, the in planning and performing our audit letter, is our recommendation letter. As a reminder, we are not here to audit your internal controls or express an opinion on them. We're here to audit your financial statements, which we did do. However, in the course of doing an audit, we obtained an understanding of your internal controls in order to plan and perform our procedures. And in the process of doing that and just doing the audit, if we come across items that we think could use improvement, we generate a recommendation letter. The one thing I would emphasize is we're just saying these are things we came across in the course of doing our audit. We're not saying this is all there is, because we weren't looking specifically for findings or internal control issues, but we're just letting you know things we came across. So we have a few items this year, and I don't think I'm going to surprise you guys by saying it was a big change for the township. I think Christy had just started like about a month before the audit did. Your clerk had just left. Tracy came in actually after we completed field work in the audit, and I know both the deputies had turned over during the year as well. So we have some recommendations. It's really not a surprise just because there was a lot of transitioning going on here. So just to kind of walk through these, the first one there is just improving closing procedures to reduce the number of adjustments we have to make and improve the accuracy of your records. The important thing with that is just having more timely, up-to-date information. The more adjustments we have to make, that just means you guys didn't have all those adjustments ahead of time to make decisions. The second one is just cleaning up the tax fund before year end and reconciling it to underlying detail. We helped take care of that just to make sure everything was paid out and the fund got zeroed out. I think Christy's got that all sorted out now going forward. That can be a bit of a challenge because, as you know, there is a lot going on with taxes. I mean, you're collecting not just for yourself, but you're having to handle the schools and the college and the county and various specialist levies. And I'm sure I'm forgetting 3 or 4 things, but there's a lot of money coming and going on top of personal property taxes and other things. So anyway, just keep an eye on that. The third one, we did notice one distribution of property taxes went out late to other governmental units. It looked like it was a one-time thing, but the state wants to make sure those go out timely. You're on top of your tax fund. I don't think that should be a problem going forward. And the fourth one is a silly comment that I have to explain every year. This comment's not a big deal. It's just the internal controls surrounding the preparation of financial statements. As I said before, these are your financial statements. We draft the official statements as part of the audit. But ultimately only the opinion letter is really ours. The rest of this is your numbers, your information, your data. And you should have controls in place to surround the preparation of these statements, which means having somebody knowledgeable of what goes into financial statements. Most smaller entities don't have a spare CPA finance director sort of person sitting around that knows, hey, the auditor goofed up footnote G or something like that. But so we have to give that recommendation. This recommendation goes out to most of our smaller entities. And I would definitely emphasize these are all recommendations. You're not required to act on them. So when I say, you should consider improving that, and I would emphasize too, we're not saying you have no idea what's going on. We certainly sat down with the full-time elected officials and went through the information in detail. But we give this recommendation. You guys all nod and go, yeah, we understand. We agree with your recommendation. However, we choose not to act on it. And I go, yeah, I know you do. And we kind of play this little song and dance every year. But anyway, I wouldn't worry too much about number 4, but the other 3, work on them. And I think you guys kind of hopefully have more of a, that's what I'm looking for, get a little more stability going forward and a little less turnover. And anyway, you got good numbers. Last year turned out well. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. Final opportunity for questions from anybody.
I have one. Sir?
Is it okay taking from the audience?
So might as well take them from the audience at this time. I'm not going to be able to answer it as well as you, Eric.
Okay.
You're representing the state?
No.
Who do you represent?
I'm a public accounting firm. The state mandates that local units of government be audited, and they contract with a private company to perform that audit.
So then,
We report the findings, and the financial statements are then filed with the state.
so then the state does require.
Yes.
Okay, so then you do represent the state. So you're kind of like an oversight or an overwatch.
Well, the idea of the audit is to check and make sure our
Yeah.
finances are good.
Yeah, the numbers are accurately reported, correct. The Department of Treasury oversees it. You guys contract with somebody to perform an audit. We perform the audit. They get filed with the state, and the state will follow up if they have any concerns.
So who's auditing ARPA funds? ARPA funds.
Oh, ARPA funds would be part of the township audit.
So you audited that aspect of their expenditures.
We didn't have any ARPA fund expenditures for last year.
Okay.
No.
Correct. The ARPA fund would be included in the financial statements because that's money coming in and going out, just like property taxes or revenue sharing. So any money that would be shown on there, it would be included as part of the audit.
And it'll be in next year's audit.
Next year.
So you'll be addressing that.
Right. Any money that would be spent would be included in whatever year it's spent. You guys actually have a few years to spend the money.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it, Eric. And I mean, the distribution thing was big with Christy and Eric working together. And I've reached out to Eric, which is probably a little outside of his scope, just for advice to make sure we're not crossing any lines that we shouldn't. He's always been very responsive, so I appreciate that.
All right. And I appreciate you guys for having us out to do the audit. And Christy especially, I know you were kind of, we really hit you pretty hard during the audit, and we figured it out and got through it. And Tracy came in at the end, and Jeff's certainly trying to hold everything together. You guys got through it, so good job.
Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next year.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, so we're moving into our first public comment section. And I know we have a couple of people that would like to speak. I'm going to ask people to speak specifically on one of the agenda items for up to 3 minutes, unless there's an elected official that wants to introduce themselves, just as I have in the past. I allow them to go in the first public comment in case they're trying to catch multiple meetings that day or something like that. So I know we at least have 2 people. If anyone would like to come up first to the lectern.
Go ahead.
That's not happening. We have better microphones now, though, so it should be good.
My name's Kim Sear. I think most of you know me, but I am your current county commissioner up in this area. Of course, we have redistrict or reapportion, I guess is what we call it. So the district has changed. Basically, I've got White River, Whitehall Township, Montague Township, Blue Lake Township, Dalton Township, Half Bruton Township, and on and on. And Lakewood Club and City of Montague and City of Whitehall. And so I got a little bit on my plate now, but my wife said I could run for 2 more years. And she did it, but so I'm gonna run again for 2 years and just looking for your support. If anyone wants information, I'm a faith, family, and freedom is what I'm all about, and I'm a conservative. I have some voting lists if people are interested in voting down the ticket. We've made some recommendations at the GOP for certain candidates who are aligned with our value system. So, and it's been very helpful even to me to figure out who to vote for, because you get down to the bottom and you've got the regents of the universities and all these people and the judges, and it's like, who are these guys? I know, but we pretty much vetted most of these people, and the people on our list pretty much align, with our value system. So Yes.
Where do we get this list?
Well, I've got them, so I can get them to you, but I can't bring them in here because I'll be beaten about
We
the
won't
head.
set them on a table.
I told him I was be beaten about the head and shoulders if I did that, so. Just, and if anybody's interested, I could always use, sign placements, you know, if you've got a yard on a busy street somewhere, that would be amazing, a lot. Because all of the, absentee ballots, if you apply for an absentee ballot, it's probably going to be in the mail this week sometime. So,
Ours are mailed.
time to rock and roll. Yep. All right, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
And Michelle?
Hi, my name is Michelle Mixa, and I'm running for Reese Puffer School Board. I'm running on a pro-child, pro-family, and pro-teacher platform. I was a public school teacher for 10 years in Holland Public. I left when I had my youngest, my son, and it broke my heart to actually stop teaching. Although I'm very happy as a stay-at-home mom, I also love teaching, and I believe in the public school system. I think we need a solid public school system. So vote for Michelle Mixa. For better, for worse, I'm also here to advocate for a dog park. I feel like our community could really use a dog park. I used to live when I lived in Ohio, I lived 5 minutes away from a dog park, and we went every day. And it was a hub of the community. People met each other there. I'm probably laying it on pretty thick right now, but I think it's good to give true examples of how it benefited our community. My friend Carol, who I met at the dog park, was a widow. She had no children. It was the highlight of her day to bring her dogs, who were the center of her life, to the dog park and meet people and chat for a few hours a day. My friend Matt never had children. His dogs were his children. I never would have probably met him. We formed community together. We supported each other. He lost his mother during that time. We were friends. We met at the dog park. We worked through those things together as friends. My friend Rachel was a homeschooler. She lived in the area for a year. She could not find friends for her kids, even though she tried to get involved in different things. I'm also a homeschooler. We met there. Our kids became best friends. We're still in very close touch. It's not just for dogs. This is a community space for people to meet each other and build community. If you're not from this community, I think it's hard to actually break in. And a dog park could be that space. So thank you very much.
And do we have anyone else that would like to comment? Anything else on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to our first decision item, which is the senior millage snow plowing, which Chris has come. And if you would like to come up, Chris, no specific time limit on this. Would you like to give us a couple of minute overview, and then any questions from the board, address those?
Great. So, hello everybody. Thank you for letting me speak for a moment. We started the snow plowing for Dalton Township through the senior millage last year. The funding was for 20 seniors. And just a reminder very briefly what the service is. This is a service through the senior millage. They have to be a senior citizen, and they have to be a resident of Muskegon County. For example, be a resident of Dalton Township if last year you guys funded us. And what we do is we simply do the basic snow plowing of their driveway, sidewalks if there's any, not in Dalton Township, I don't think you guys have any here, but a path to the door, ramps, stuff like that. We come out, they don't have to call in advance. Once they sign up, they don't have to worry about it, it just gets done. We do not go out unless it's at least 2 inches, because we don't want to waste our time or the township dollars on the dusting at all. And so what we do is we also prioritize low income. So I did review the 20 seniors that received it from Dalton Township. All but 2, only income they had was Social Security. So we do vet those things, and we always also we prioritize it. So if there's a request, then the person that has additional income would have to get bumped up from that. Just a couple of good examples of this program and why it's so vital. Another senior millage service, Age Well Services, they provide meals, stuff like that, where they deliver it. And unfortunately, the director, Chris Kelly, she's told us that she desperately needs our program because they can't deliver meals if it's not plowed. I have one senior that I personally do over in the Heights. She has a ramp and she couldn't get out for doctor's appointment. She had dialysis, sorry, that she had to cancel multiple doctor's visits until finally, we have a lot of call volume, so we finally able to get her signed up. So it is a very good program, and so what I'd like to do is just share the program with townships and see if it's a good fit for your township. It seems like it was a good fit for Dalton Township. And so how we do the billing, how we set up the funding is we based it on, we did the research and quotes usually for a plow company is about 20 pushes a year. That's what we call it. We come out and do one push. We call it a push. And so at the end of every month, we would report to the township how many plows it is. For example, in December, maybe we did 2. That's all we get paid for in December. If at the end of March or February, when the snow's done, if we've only done 15 pushes, we only get paid for 15. So that would also frees you up. If there is funding left over, you can choose to use a different program for the end of the rest of the fiscal year. So that's the program. And we have 150 seniors we service through the county, as well as 3 townships we've partnered with. Dalton Township last year, Fruitland Township, and Fruitport. So any questions I'd love to answer? Sorry, last one. I always like to make sure everybody knows all the funds go towards those doing the work or the equipment. As you probably know, equipment is very expensive. None of the dollars goes to the church, doesn't go to rent space or anything like that. It all goes to the service, and we have to account for all those dollars. So any questions I'd love to answer, but that's the program.
If somebody is on the lawn care program, do you just automatically enroll them into the snowplow, or do they have to go through the motions of calling and requesting?
Yes, because every year we have a waiting list.
Okay.
We've grown every year, and yet there's still people, this is a very vital service.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a limit. There just is. So we don't grandfather anyone in because some people learn about it for the first time this year.
Yeah.
So they do have to call
Okay.
and reply.
All right. You guys did an awesome job with lawn.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
It's a little skeptical last year, to be very honest with you, but the feedback that we've heard has been very, very positive. So I'm excited this year. I'm much more gung ho to support. So
I'm really glad to hear that.
And I had called all the people on the list that had received it in Dalton to get their feedback and have the conversation. Overall, it was supportive. There were a few people that said they caught some grass in their yards when they were plowing, but other than that, it was basically supportive. You know, I mean, my opinion on the senior millage overall isn't super strong. I think the intention is very good. I think the government is very bad at managing things. So I'm not confident that it should be doing that, but it nevertheless does exist. And so what we did last year is we put it towards the snow plowing, used up the amount that Chris ended up billing us for, and then we put the rest towards the Safe Seniors through Age Well Services. I think that's a fairly decent plan. We can obviously have more of a discussion about that, but we should make a decision on the snow plowing at least very soon, since we're getting close to it.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the Living Word Senior Services snow removal proposal from the senior millage funds.
second.
I'm gonna go with Nola for the motion, Renee for the support. Is there any other discussion among the board? Any other questions for Chris?
Thank you.
No? Roll call vote.
Nola,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Carrie,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Tracy, yes, Jeffrey.
Yes. Motion passes. Appreciate you coming out, Chris, and for those questions. Next, we have maintenance credit card. And this came up because we obviously have the fire chief, the clerk, and the treasurer with the credit cards. And maintenance, we have certain accounts at certain places, so we can go there, we can go to Craig's Hardware, Ace, and just say, bill us, and they invoice us, and that works out pretty decent. But if they're trying to get a specific part or whatever it may be, we don't have an account at the place, then they use the credit card. They have to either borrow it from Tracy or Christie, and so it just ends up being clunky because they're doing it relatively often. And so Nate, our head of maintenance, it seems reasonable for him to just have one.
Yep. I make a motion to approve the issue of a credit card to the head of maintenance and grounds for up to $5,000.
Support.
Motion by Carrie, support by Nola, and that's the amount that the other ones are, so it matches the purchasing policy. Any discussion among the board?
No.
Hearing none, roll call vote.
Carrie,
Yes.
Nola,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Tracy, yes, Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Lee,
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes. Motion passes. Next, we have selling the 1988 GMC Sierra. And now, obviously, we're replacing some of the equipment because some of this is decently old and in fairly rough shape. We can obviously handle it in a few different ways, but it's a bit different than a business or a government, so there should be some sort of reasonable and fair process. I think the bidding process, somewhat similar, that we use for land sales makes sense to open bids. That way, there's no conflict of interest. There's not me specifically working it out with someone, which, I think I would be reasonable in that, but it's better to have that check in there anyways. And then also on this, the economy has gone kind of mad, obviously. I think everyone's realized over the last few years. And so pricing things out and logistically getting them done are both very difficult. And so it's a 1988 truck. It's not new. I've driven it. It drives decent. It sounds, I'm not even sure if it has a carburetor. It sounds like it has a carburetor that could be clean from 88. And so it sounds like motorcycles I've driven that could use a clean carburetor. And I printed out some of this information on recommended book value versus just some of the ones that are for sale online. Now, these are nicer than ours, but they are going for ridiculous prices. So I have no idea where to set the minimum bid at.
I'm kind of curious about, that's a lot of miles on a vehicle.
It's a decent amount.
And I'm sure that the upkeep has been well maintained on it, like starter needs to be changed out and all that stuff, because
It seems decent, but I would be surprised with people changing office and people changing. It's hard to say. Like our fire equipment is well taken care of, very consistent.
Yeah.
I'd be less confident in the years for maintenance equipment.
Wow. 'Cause that makes a huge difference when you're putting a vehicle out for sale. If it's really, really bad, there's no way we can ask $17,000.
No, I wouldn't recommend that one. And that is in better shape, obviously. So
I'll make a motion, to put the 1988 GMC up for bid for a minimum of $8,000.
all right, we have a motion for $8,000.
Have you looked at it, Carrie? Have you looked at the vehicle?
Yeah.
It's this one without the seats and the seat belts and all that.
It has a seatbelt, at least on the driver's side, because I've driven it and I use the seatbelt. There is a chunk out of the seat, but there is a seat there. But there's some foam that's gone.
Yeah, it's got a corner that the seats come. It is a rough drive. It does drive.
Or we can entertain a motion for a different number.
You know what, I'll go ahead and support that.
No.
Unless you make one.
I'm gonna make another motion.
I retract.
I haven't seen it, but what you're seeing here on the low retail and average, and that's what you set it up for with all the things there. I would say I'd set a minimum for $1,500.
1,500.
1,500.
That's the low retail.
I'll support that. I'll support that.
Okay, we have a subtraction of the 8,000. We have a motion by Lee for 1,500 with support of 1,500 by Noah.
Yep.
Any other discussion among the board?
When you start to school.
And it isn't like it's set at that price, it ends up being a bidding or just like we do with the property.
It's a minimum.
So just because we say 15 doesn't mean someone can't.
Correct.
Pay more.
Right,
Right.
if they go check it out and they run it and they look
Right.
at it and they're like, no, it's worth 8,000, they make that bid, then
It's like, does
So
the air
I-
work? Does the heat work?
I like better go lower than a higher price than the heat scare me anyway.
I'll second that. Did Nola second that already?
Noah seconded 1,500.
Yeah.
Now, any other discussion among the board? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Lee,
Yes.
Nola,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy, yes, Christie.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes. Motion passes. Next, we have Interlochen streetlight resolution. This came up because the homeowners association on Interlochen is changing out their lights. The two that are nearest Middle Lake Road, which is the main road, obviously, because it goes through, whereas Interlochen just goes in that little neighborhood. with those being switched out, they had recommended that one still stay there and be done. I reached out to consumers because we had that one where Middle Lake adjoins to Duff. And the people kept driving through one people's yard toward the lake. And that one's up and it works pretty good. I've driven by it at night. There's decent light there. When I talked to consumers, they recommended doing this one primarily over Middle Lake Road for kids staying at the bus stop and that type of thing. Same setup. Now, they weren't able to give me specific engineering designs in the relatively short amount of time. I talked to them a couple of weeks ago. They were able to generate the resolution and contract that are necessary for anything that consumers does. They need a resolution and contract done by the board, even if it is $100.
I make a motion to approve the resolution and contract for the streetlights at Interlochen Way and Middle Lake Road. Needs to be done.
Motion by Noah. Do we have support?
I'll support.
Support by Renee. Any discussion among the board? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Noah,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy, yes. Jeffrey,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Lee.
Motion passes. Next, we have Drexel and Putnam land sale proposal. And these two parcels are in the same little piece. We had looked at them last month. We were able to get one realtor, not two. The other realtor is interested in doing the free
Right.
amounts. But we were able to have one realtor draw up comparables. And so we have the letter on these from her, all of the comparables. I included in the reference packet if people want the details. And so these are the numbers that she had recommended. Which are that, it's 1.0694 acres and 0.7423 acres. And similar things in the area have been sold for about $15,802.82 per acre. Yeah, it's a decent amount. And the Drexel equation comes out to almost 17 grand, and Putnam equation comes out to just under 12 grand. So the recommendation from the realtor on the comparables is for 11,000 for both due to the odd shape of the one on Drexel.
It's for 11,000 for both or each?
That's what she recommended for both.
They're odd shape.
Obviously, quite a big difference than if you're going by just the acreage.
Each?
She recommends for both.
Is that these things right in here?
Correct, yep, I put lines through them, so it's that one and that,
Oh, okay. Okay.
because they were requested
Oh,
again.
okay, it's that. I'm sitting here thinking that's one little section, it's that whole thing.
This, so that's the odd shape, it's an odd shape.
So there's pieces missing.
Correct. Those little pieces, yep, and then that one as well.
It's not missing someone else.
Yeah, someone else owns it.
Correct.
That's
Right in the
missing.
middle, right in the middle.
But that's missing. Okay,
Make the motion, put the two parcels in consideration for a bid of minimum of $11,000.
We have a motion for $11,000, that's total for both of these, correct? Yep.
support.
Support by Nola.
Yep.
Any other discussion among the board? All right, roll call vote.
Carrie,
Yes.
Noah,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Tracy, yes. Christie,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Jeffrey.
No. Motion passes. Next, we have this property. So in my notes on this property and in my video update on the brief, if anyone watched it, we hadn't had the deed resolved because there wasn't an electronic searchable form to be found. And then the physical copy also couldn't be found. And so the title company had recommended that I contact the DNR, which is where the township should have gotten the parcel from at some time in the past. I did contact them. They were able to get the paperwork to the title company to confirm that it had been transferred to the township correctly. So, and that's just occurred over the last few days. And so we do have proof that the township owns this piece, which is good if we're looking at selling it, but it did take a little bit longer to come through.
And guide me, is this all of this and that?
This one
That
right here. Yeah, I should just print them in color for you.
Yeah, well, it's cheaper.
It's my habit to print things in black and white, but obviously maps don't show up as well. And so it's that same letter as the other two parcels that includes her recommendation on the amounts.
I make a motion to put the parcel under consideration out for a bid for a minimum of 11,000.
There's a motion by Renee for 11,000, support by Carrie for 11,000. Any other discussion among the board? All right, roll call vote.
Renee,
Yes, ma'am.
Carrie,
Yes.
Nola,
Yes.
Tracy, yes. Jeffrey.
No.
Lee,
No.
Christie.
No.
Motion passes. Next, we have our discussion items, which the first one is water policy. And at this water policy board meeting, we had all the rates, the charges, the fees that we talked about last time, in addition to how the discussion started. I do not recommend that governments do this. They do this quite often. They start off talking about one thing and then it expands. That's obviously what this board did. I expressed our disinterest in general from the board in the fees being charged up front. Several of the other municipalities also expressed similar concerns. And so that ended up being taken off. So we are back to just discussing the mandatory ordinance, which is section 5 minus part C, because part C was put in about the advanced direct connection charge. Any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns?
I just hate being in city water. I hate being forced into city water.
Yeah. Get it? Oh, one adjustment that I did suggest on here too, if you look at section 5, part B, part 3, part 2, actually. The part in parentheses, it reads, the owner of the property may not improve, expand, rehabilitate, re-drill, deepen, or otherwise extend the useful life of failed well. This was put in to get people to not avoid that connection charge after a well had failed. I see no reason that they couldn't still do that as part of their expense. And so I brought it up. The lawyer for the Water Policy Board said that we could add in to avoid connection, meaning that in that case, they would still have to have a connection, but if they wanted to keep their well going and by having it repaired, they could. So that should be added.
But not use it for.
It still doesn't say for human consumption, correct?
It's whacked.
That's really whacked, so. I don't like it. Plain simple. You know, like.
Any other questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns? All right, food sovereignty. Now, what I've done here is the ordinance from the town of Maine, Sedgwick, Maine. I went through and I adapted it so that it would apply in the case of Dalton and the state of Michigan. There are 3 things that I think should be changed and updated in here, and I'll obviously do that. The one is that it specifically mentions for a rural community or a rural feel of the community, but I think it's reasonable to include suburban, urban, as food applies to all of them, just happens to be their situation. I also think there's a weakness in part 3 in authority, and I'll probably have to do a decent amount of research there to strengthen that up. Some of the things that they had cited were obviously Maine law. I was able to bring the Michigan Constitution in here in part 2, but I will have to look at more state statutes on that. And then the third thing is that section 7 of township action against preemption, I think, is a little too strong. So those are the 3 primary changes that I would look at. Obviously, I could adapt it a decent amount more, but does anyone have any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns?
Yeah, the only thing I saw was in 2021, you go down to, you still have town of Sedgwick and so township and Dalton. That's the only thing I saw. Everything else seemed pretty good.
Didn't it say?
Oh, yep, you are right.
Yes. Question?
Sure.
Down the list there, somewhere where it talks about, I can't think of the term, it begins with S. But it has to do with either state or other government coming in and nullifying any aspect of the ordinance that they feel is contrary to their legal standings. I don't care for that.
Right, so I think you're talking probably about the parts where, the severability.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is if a law is a normal thing to include, right? If a law gets taken to court, and then that law, in some part of the law, is considered illegal, not enforceable, something to that effect.
Right.
Unconstitutional, whatever it may be, then your entire law could just be void, right? Null and void. The severability clause means that the portion that, because the court and judges have a decent amount of discretion over this type of thing, but they can rule that the portion of the law doesn't apply, but the rest of the law will still be in effect except for that portion. So severability protects the law, even if there was a ruling against a portion of it, protects the rest of it.
I think that's, it seems like that's a good way of looking at it, but yet that's still a slippery slope. If they start to take away incrementally our God-given rights, they'll start with one and then they'll move to the next. That's just the way they operate and function. I think we need to take a stand for our personal liberties overall and not give them that opportunity. You know, if they're gonna force something on us, that's one thing, but
Yeah, like an all or nothing on the ordinance.
that's right, you compromise and just don't look for the opportunity. And if I saw it, I looked through it, I said, ooh, I see an opportunity for me to get in here and play with this. And I think we need to pass the message that we're standing on our rights. Yeah, no compromise. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas?
I love it.
Next, we have ARPA percentages, and Tracy brought this up, maybe it'd be a good idea to think of the ARPA funds in percentages. Obviously, attached to the email, I had my very simple spreadsheet where you can change the percentage and then it'll change the amount and do the calculations for it. And so that you can just see where adjusting things would make a difference. Now, this was, I just put numbers in here. The roads I put at 50% because I think we should spend at least half of the ARPA funds on roads. It's an important part of infrastructure. It hits everyone. It's difficult to do everyone's road, of course. But I think a decent portion should be spent on that. And then we're obviously approximately halfway to that. The website is a very minor amount. We could have spent a portion on the website, but the way that I've been able to go, we should just be able to spend few $1,000s a year and be pretty good on that. So it's very minor portion, so I put that in as 1%. These other things I just put in at 10%, so we could just see where they are in that spreadsheet, in the actual electronic version of the spreadsheet. You can change it to 20, 30%, 25%, whatever you want to adjust it there. So I wanted to see where people thought maybe some of the percentages should be, if we should break it down differently. Thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, concerns?
I think website can be called technology.
It could. So I kind of like the audiovisual system as part of the hall,
Okay.
the township hall work.
Yeah, it's definitely easier to understand when it has a percentage.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the dangers with these types of funds is to not see them as trade-offs or zero sum, right? Because the economy overall is not necessarily zero sum. The resources can be created, the economy can grow overall. I mean, it does, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't have the wealth that we have today. But if you have just a specific amount, just a specific sum, if you spend it somewhere, you can't spend it somewhere else. So it is zero sum. It's a trade-off. And it cannot grow. And it's a good idea to think about in percentages for that reason, because if you say, all right, well, I want a higher percentage here, well, you have to make it a lower percentage somewhere else.
Yeah, and there might need, and at some point, I could see the fire requiring more just because our lovely president and our cost of fuel going crazy. So I can really see.
The fire
more
trucks
going into
do
fire
take a lot of fuel. Maintenance uses quite a bit of fuel,
Maintenance as well.
but fire more.
Diesels.
I just want to make a comment about Catalpa Park. We've been out there today and it looks really nice. I don't know if any of you out there have been to Catalpa Park lately, but it is 100% improved. I mean, as far as what was there, we still have a ways to go, but it was very nice to pull up and see that equipment out there.
And it seemed that you could see that children have been using it too.
Yay.
And they're not destroying it.
Yeah, I think it's decent. You know, the idea of not taking care of Catalpa Park went because there was various vandalism there and damage to some vault toilets that were put out there that we had the tanks taken care of. But that was feels like it was 1987. I think it was quite a while ago, you know, so some of the same people that were kids at that time might be adults there now, but it's definitely gone through a big transition. That's a long period of time.
I'd still like to see a sign put out there so people know it's there. It took me,
Yeah.
I'd actually, wait, is it the street? No, it's this street.
I feel like you're two-tracking trying to find it.
I've inquired into the sign. We have to get engineering approval for it to be in the right of way for the road through the road commission, and the county road commission has been light on engineers. And so one of those has to look at that and approve that. And so I've put in a request, but it's obviously not top of their priority for things they're looking at. So
I'd also like to see some picnic tables.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and Tracy has a lead on some picnic tables.
Yeah,
so.
I put a text into someone, to try and get a few picnic tables. We'll see if they have any left. Through the city of Muskegon. I think
Cost?
had some. They were free. I don't know if there are any left though.
That's a good price.
We'll see.
It's definitely within budget.
Yes.
Yeah, and on that project, I think, you know, that's probably, my feeling is that that's taken that far enough. That's that's fulfilling the obligation or the responsibility that's there. And because obviously more can be improved. We've seen proposals in hundreds of thousands of dollars on these parts. And that's too much. You know, we went with a decent budget expenditure on this. I got a guy to cut the metal out for free for us. With his equipment and his time, I had the cement things ripped out, all the footings, and we had the sand laid in. These pieces of equipment, which were decent budget oriented, because if you go through one of the commercial companies, it ends up being a fortune. And so instead I was able to order these off Amazon. Our maintenance guys were able to put them together and put them out there. So we're probably, at this point, we're a little over 10 grand, a little under 15 grand, I'd say, in that total project. So, which isn't bad.
Especially for what's
Now
out
we're
there.
looking at 30,000 before.
All right, any other questions, comments, thoughts, ideas,
I
concerns?
just want to say, I'd like to see something move forward with the roof.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's good to see something.
leaking, and I think to spend our money wisely, and that would be to put it into this township hall where we have to do our work.
I think the important thing, I mean, for me, all right, if I was just making the decision, I'd put a lot towards roads, and I'd put a decent amount towards the hall, because the hall's in rough shape, right? It's a 1970s building, it's rough. I've had 2 electrical companies out because I know the electrical is wrong in this building, and I wanted them to tell me what was wrong and then give me a quote. And it was relatively difficult to do, and both of them said that they weren't particularly interested after looking at it. And so it's a mess.
It's nice.
And working that stuff out is decently hard. And then I would do more minimal amount on like website, audio, visual, which is part of the hall, some maintenance equipment, some to the fire I'm comfortable with, and then some of this kind of minimal amount to resolve our responsibility to take care of parks.
Where are we at with this building when it comes to the roof?
Well, you guys put it on hold last month.
We've got it done.
That's what I'm-
Right. And so what I'm doing for the roof, because basically, I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
we,
When we'll do it.
right, odds of coming up with more quotes is, I mean, it took me all summer to accumulate the few quotes that we had. What do we have, 4, 5 quotes, something like that? And
We had 2 and one was really extravagant.
It was extreme.
we
It
had,
was unbelievable.
yeah, we ended up with more than 2, maybe 3. But, and so I am having a company come in and for a half a day with 2 guys, including the products that they might use, they'll do $1,000, a full day at $2,000 to check. We don't know of leaks currently right now. There's obviously been leaks in the past. We obviously have delamination. We obviously have some sides that are peeling off a little bit. So there could be a leak going down the wall that we can't detect. So they'll check into that. My directive is to get my roof to survive the winter. So that is where we're at, because we're obviously not gonna have a project done otherwise, this year.
Invest in tarps is what I just heard.
And so, and then we'll, you know, it should be one of our priorities for getting it done. It needs to be done next year. I don't wanna try to get it to survive 2 winters.
Right,
No.
right.
So I'd like to see that moving forward as much as I'm gonna put that on hold. I understand that we put it on hold so far, but it does need to be, I think we need to turn the heat up.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward is just making a decision. Now, by this point, since we're not getting it by winter, you know, we can do a winter project and we do roast in the winter, but it'll end up being different prices.
Right.
It's not like companies will hold a price that long.
I'm not sure it's gonna get better.
It's not
The prices?
necessarily, it's not necessarily the winter
It's
that
hard to say.
makes prices go up. It's the cost of material.
The material costs go
Yeah,
up
that's what
dramatically.
changes, is the cost of the material.
Right, I think he's talking the time, though, the time difference.
Right. I mean, I don't know, maybe they're, you know, I'm sure they can replace a flat roof in winter.
Oh, they've done it. I've seen it done.
Sounds like we need a roofing company to start in Dalton Township.
We need a company to come in here.
Yeah, I mean, so I can,
Nice
you
to
know,
support local.
reach out to those companies and see if their quotes still stand and bring it back for decision. Cool.
Okay.
All right, second, public/board comment, and I've got one thing here, the railroad project out here. Because obviously the last one, when the road closed, I think a lot of people thought, oh, that must be the railroad. That's what I thought when I turned down and I hadn't been informed what was happening. There was signs up and it was the culvert collapsing. So they got that replaced and that part's done. The railroad project, which we don't hear directly, right? The railroad won't communicate with me directly. And so they communicate with the road commission, kind of, and the road commission mostly communicates with me. They have it scheduled right now for November 7th. That is the day, that is starting the day before the election.
Oh, come
Of
on.
course.
So I put a request in with the road commission so that they could put a request in with the railroad company to start it on the 9th. The
Yeah.
day after the company, they have put in that request. We don't have confirmation that they're moving it as of yet. So, but the hall and the fire department for voting will be open on those days. And Tracy was saying that, that could be a bit of a disaster, people trying to get to vote. And so we could put people out directing traffic if it occurs.
Yeah, if they don't have one of the lanes open, there will be somebody stationed wherever the signs are to make sure that whoever's coming through there knows that, yes, you know, this is it.
Right.
You can vote.
It gets scheduled at a bad time. It's not like we have any control over the railroad company, so they will decide what they want. But our request is officially in. So, good. Public comments, I know we have at least one, if you would like to come up. And this can be more of an open discussion if you want to.
Thank you. My name is Bill Scott. I live on East Daniels, the portion of East Daniels east off Russell Road. We have a problem. At the end of my road, there's a great expanse of woods and trails. And there's another street that comes in from the north, which is
I believe it's Poppy Way.
Poppy Way. I forgot the name of that one. I have people go by my house 50, 60 miles an hour in this short 1/8 of a mile stretch and go right into the woods. They use the woods to avoid the police on Russell Road to cut up to the apartments up on White Lake Drive. They go back and they dump stuff. I ride my quads back there. My grandkids come over, we ride our dirt bike, they ride our dirt bikes, we ride quads. I see people walking. I've never seen horses. I've seen people back there on side-by-sides. My request is, could you guys maybe partner with the county? Shut that door before he gets away.
Outside of Kim's jurisdiction.
To get some kind of barricade, guardrail, allow enough room for pedestrians, horses, side-by-sides, quads, but not vehicles, because they're dumping back there. If I had time for the rest of my life to clean up that woods, I'd never get it done. There are mattresses, there are roofing, and I see people go by, I get on my quad and I follow them. Because I'm gonna take their picture, I'm gonna get their license plate number, and when the police say, well, what do they look like? I'll say, let me show you. The people that I've followed so far are not dumping, which is a good thing, but there's evidence back there of people dumping. So if a guardrail was put across the Daniels entrance and the Poppy Way entrance, that would not stop people from going back there, but it's the two most popular entrance points. It would greatly reduce the people flying down my road. And I'll be honest, you guys are concerned about the whole township. I care about my road.
Well, of course.
Be honest.
Is it private
Who owns
property?
the property? Who owns the property?
The township and the
That's an
state.
unplatted paper road, or it's a platted paper road that hasn't been developed.
Right, and that's where we get into
Okay.
the difficulty because it is a public access area. So I can inquire with the road commission about the options on something like that, but I know they're at least going to be limited, or we're going to start stacking up paperwork and approvals through government agencies. One of the two.
Well, I just ask your consideration because in this day and age, you go out and you tell somebody, hey, slow down, they might come back with a gun. I mean, there's
Oh,
some
yeah.
crazy people.
Oh, yeah.
And the people I'm talking about, a person on your planning commission, John Bridgewater, who's right down the road from me, I talked to him about this. He has security cameras at his house. He said, you wouldn't believe the number of people that park there and then come walking out of the woods to a place that somebody right now is in jail for meth, across the road from me. These people, do I hesitate putting a bullet between their eyes? Come on my property and mess with my stuff? Not a bit. But I don't want to go there. I don't want that crime in my neighborhood. I don't want these people speeding by. I have great grandkids that are all the way from a month to 4 years old. We're quite family oriented. We have kids over playing all the time. I have a very wonderful dog. My elderly mother-in-law lives right next door. She used to go out and yell at people, slow down. I says, you know what? Don't do that no more. These people are not normal anymore. So I ask your consideration in coming to some kind of solution. Thank you for your time.
What was your
Thank
last
you.
name, Bill?
My last name is Scott, S-C-U-T-T. And Tracy, were you at the MTA conference in Lansing?
No.
No? Okay, then you have a doppelganger.
Good. Any other public comment on anything? Yeah, come on up, Al.
Al Richards, 5375 Staple Road. In regards to Kim's request, I'll give my support in this way for sure. When I was trying to contact the prosecutor's office and the sheriff, who were not responding, I gave one phone call to Kim, and I got meetings the next day with both offices. So in that regard, appreciate that, Kim, what you were able to do in regards to that. Second thing, you voted no on an issue tonight regarding real estate. And I think we're lowballing the real estate value. If there are similar properties at $15,000, I think that's where it should be at.
Yeah, I think it's debatable. It's hard to say because it depends on what someone will pay for it, because she included those comparables, but then the reasons of the one being a low area and the one being oddly shaped, I mean, they're legitimate concerns. So I definitely see that part too. And so there's a decent amount of uncertainty there.
Yeah, because the one, I believe, that I read where it says the low area, that people would have to build it up in order to build on
Bring
it.
in
They'd have to.
It costs some money to build it up, just build it
Yeah.
up. That's why we went lower.
Well, you can set a price and,
It's,
Well, that's the
You never know what you're gonna get.
It's hard.
Real estate's gone nuts.
it's hard to estimate those, and because this is bidding,
Sure.
in the bidding, we obviously don't set a maximum.
Yep.
And so it is the setting of a minimum, and it can, it can go up from there.
In fact, we have done that. We actually had a minimum for 80,000, and the person offered 128,000.
That's right.
No.
Almost 240,000.
211,000
It's been crazy.
for 28.97 acres.
One last comment. I was talking recently to my nurse, one of my nurses, and she's a judge in a local tribe. And we were just laughing about the whole issue of sovereignty. Because people want sovereignty, yet they want the bucks. They want the payout. So they're on both sides of the table. And we were just talking about sovereignty here in this township tonight. But if you're still looking to grab the bucks, you're vulnerable. All right? They got you in your pocket through ARPA right now. They got you in your pocket. It's like a church that wants to be, their own entity and not have the state involved with what's going on, but yet they sign a 501c3 with the government. And then the government tells them, shut your church unless you put on a mask or something stupid.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So just putting it out there, and we'll be talking to you guys here real quick. You know what about too, don't you?
That was in the paper.
Yeah, $5,000 bonus for you, buddy,
And our library,
through ARPA.
and our librarians.
$1.6 million? And you got $36 million laying in the weeds, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah, well, what you're talking about is fiscal decentralization, right? And so, which at some point over the next few years, I'll probably write a paper on this. But I think a reasonable solution would be to take property taxes and make those more locally focused, which have grown.
Absolutely.
Right? We fund the reason we get to vote on the Board of Regents for Wayne State University is a lot of our taxes go there, which seems odd.
That's weird.
I'll probably never visit Wayne State University in my life.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Right?
Right?
And so we have that type of thing. But then to make up for that, we do the state revenue sharing, which last year I didn't work out the percentage in this year's audit. Last year's audit, it was 53% of our budget. And so in state revenue sharing, it's included in the state constitution. And so it's already set up to have the state as a unitary system, right? Instead of a federal system of parts, like the states versus the country, the nation, that's a federal system. But
Entity.
the state, with the local municipalities under it, is a unitary system. The state creates us,
Right.
right? So it is more naturally centralized. And so divorcing the fiscal means that everything's entwined through would be good. Is along with different avenues of ordinance or legal or political sovereignty that we're talking about. But tackling that all together would be, well, it's impossible. You have to try to bite it off in reasonable chunks to make progress and gain traction, right? As we've discussed.
Right.
And so that is my idea. In the history of the Native American nations is interested in disturbing Russell Means. If you haven't seen the speeches of Russell Means to federal Congress, I believe in the 1970s, check those out. They're very good.
I will. Yeah, well, I did think of one last thing. I think what you're doing with Chris and the snow plowing issue and the grass cutting issue, I think that's what we're all about. I think that's the greatest thing ever.
It is.
I was so glad to hear that tonight.
Very good.
Yeah, my reservations there. See, yeah, Kim, do you want to come up, Kim?
Well, just
address that?
on that, it's a long story, a little more involved than what you had said, but we are going through negotiations with unions and with the county regarding their pay and that type of thing. Part of what their pay may be going forward is that $5,000 that we were talking about. Instead of giving them an 8% annual increase in their wages, something along those lines. But that applies, and I think those funds will probably come out of ARPA funds. The elected officials' money will as far as I know right now, will not come out of the ARPA funds. Any elected officials, that will be out of the unassigned fund balance. So that's where we're at with that thing.
That's not what the article said, but
Well, the article was.
I'll look into that a little bit further myself, because that's very disturbing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, it's like you
That's what he said.
complain about politicians giving themselves raises all the time, and then, well, you guys turn right around and do it.
Well, and with an oddity in the township, right? My first 2 years in office, I proposed that the elected officials didn't get raises.
Yeah.
Caught a little bit of flack over it, which I was surprised, who supports that? And then in my last 2 years,
Cost of living is one thing.
well, the last 2 years, I plan on proposing some increases because there's actually in the 1787 constitutional debate, Franklin made this proposal and he said he didn't know if it was correct, but that have elected officials make zero money. Now, the issue with it, he wanted it to be in the discussion, it's in Madison's notes. The issue with that is it excludes all poor people, or you have to develop a large industry, which we have now with lobbies, which is unfortunate, but nevertheless, you would have had to have developed a large industry, probably pre-lobby industry, which is largely 1900s, to support specific candidates. And then you'd have special interest groups largely running things like they are now, but we would have seen that probably a century earlier. And so it's an interesting debate, that's for sure. And we've had the discussion a couple of times over the last couple of years, but we'll have it again this coming year. I'll start working on the budget again soon here over the winter, and we'll obviously have those meetings in the spring leading into our meeting of the electors and everything in March. So good. Anything else?
All right.
Rachel?
I got Maria.
Oh, the Max bus, yeah.
Had to go. Rachel Church, your local librarian, Dalton Township Library, 5th Street, Twin Lake. Yes, Friday, catch the Max bus if you've never ridden a city's bus. This is your opportunity to do it for free, just to see what it's like. They're gonna stop at 11 a.m. at the library and go to the post office, Coney Park, and then come down here and see if any of these people are gonna be out there waving at us, and Chief Stiles and anybody and his crew will come out and wave. And because it's such a short trip here, they're gonna try to bring class with us and then take it back and drop them off and pick up another group and come by again. So if you can come out and wave if you see the Mets bus going by on that route, or if you want to ride that route, you can go to our website, mattle.org, and register and come and ride along with us, or just show up at the library on Friday. Everybody's welcome. Your tax dollars are covering that, and Max is kindly joining with us and paying their portion. And with the price of gas, who knows, maybe we can get a Max bus to stop in Twin Lake again someday. That'd be a great thing. That's one thing I'd like to see. We used to have one and we don't anymore. Also wanted to let you know, we had a shot clinic for flu and COVID boosters through the Health Project last month. Out of the 40-some people who came, 29 were able to get shots. We're going to do it again this month, I believe the 24th of October from 1 to 5. So it's regular flu shot, enhanced flu shot for those 65 and over, regular COVID shot for those 5 and up, and the new Omicron variant also. And then the school is going to have trunk or treat in the parking lot on October 28th from 6 to 7. So if anybody wants to go out, decorate their vehicle, load up their candy and hand it out to kids, I'm sure they would love to see you. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Good. Anything else on anything else? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is supported. Everyone in favor say aye. Aye. Adjourn.